You may be wondering why I have included Luckey Tor in this video, as it wasn't part of the original walk from Bel Tor Corner. Before I go into that aspect, let's have a look at the route of the walk listed in the programme. From Bel Tor Corner we head over Sharp Tor and going around Nag Hill, over Yard Tor down and up to Yard Tor itself. We then continue past the memorial and on up to Corndon Tor and along the ridge of Corndon down, before turning and going to West Shallerford, East Shallerford and on to Jordan. Then it's along the Two Moors Way to Pondsworthy, Sweaton and then over to Prynne Cottage before heading back to Bel Tor car park. The original concept of this walk was to include Luckey Tor as part of the route, but it was soon obvious that the terrain wasn't really suitable for a group walk, and it relied heavily on the Robrook farm landowner giving permissions for us to walk over their land. As the walking group programme was cancelled, the restrictions on the type of terrain or walking time and distance were no longer relevant, so I've included the walk as an extra, as it's probable that a lot of walkers haven't seen this tour before. The Luckey Tor route in this instance is accessed from Robrook farm area. Unfortunately, the landowner flatly refused us permission to use the route across his land, stating we should go to Bel Tor and start from there. Plan B was to access Luckey Tor by going around the Robrook farmland, following a steep and difficult descent down to the Tor, but I certainly can't recommend it. The landowner gave no reasons why we couldn't access the Tor over his land. It may have been the coronavirus or a vandalism problem. Whatever the reasons, we have to respect his wishes. I have done this route before, but several months of new moorland growth had obliterated the pathway, and whilst I found the path, it was not always suitable to use.
We're now at the top of Luckey Tor itself.
And eventually we ended up on the top of Luckey Tor, which wasn't good.
Another outcrop here.
Sometimes plans don't go the way you expect them to, but that's just the way it is.
Here come our intrepid explorers.
After a lot of backtracking and some localised mountain climbing, we ended up at the foot of the Tor. For those who haven't seen Luckey Tor before, it is a 220-metre high granite tor sited in a Dartmoor gorge rising directly from the valley floor. It is not where you would expect to see a Dartmoor tor, but it is very impressive. The spring covering of leaves to the trees surrounding Luckey Tor made it difficult to see from a distance. Only small amounts of the tor were visible. The lighting conditions for photography were not good, going from extreme shadows to overexposure in an instant.
The cookie was going just then.
For those who want to visit this granite beast, it is probably better to approach the Tor either from Bel Tor or from Badger's Holt along the northern side of the River Dart. But don't get the idea that even those routes are easy. There is a lot of clambering.
Very impressive.
And the difficulty is A+. After having a cup of coffee and a snack, it's time to move on. But we've decided not to go back up towards the top of the gorge, but to go along the river to Badger's Holt. Looking at this tor from a far distance, and many times I've noticed climbers on the rock face, it seems quite popular from that aspect.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I didn't see you. Can we do it again?
The route through the trees on the northern bank of the River Dog is really easy in places, but also hard in others, until you get about 2/3 of the way back to Badger's Holt, when it becomes a normal riverside path. And now it's time to get back to our walk from Bel Tor Corner. We rejoin the main walk, ascending Sharp Tor.
Sharp Tor.
Every time I walk over this tor, I do wonder how that lone tree on the top survives. This is also a good place to see some of the tors we're going to visit today.
It's Corndon Tor. And that's Yar Tor.
Descending the other side of the tor is a bit of a picky affair, walking between the areas of rock clitter.
It's almost still here at the moment. A little bit different than when we came last time.
Our first cuckoo of the year, just faintly in the background. Reaching the bottom of the valley and over a now dried up boggy area, we turn left and head towards Nag Hill. Before we turn, just to our right is the gnarled remains of an old tree. It does have a very interesting appearance.
There's Sharp Tor. From a different angle, still see that lone tree on the top. Just got to weave our way in between the gorse bushes here. Quite pleasant at the moment. There's hardly any wind. Can you hear the cuckoo?
Our second cuckoo, within a matter of minutes.
I think I got the cuckoo.
Not had a visual sighting yet though. The pathway, once through the gorse area, is pretty well defined and fairly easy to follow. A rowan tree or witch tree will be covered in berries by the autumn.
Can you hear the cuckoo?
Another view of Rowbrook Farm. I prefer not to think about that too much. It's that cuckoo again. Our pathway now skirts Nag Hill, which incidentally isn't indicated on the map, and leads us to a Bronze Age reeve settlement. The field boundaries are just recognisable.
A settlement here of some description.
There are further settlements below Yar Tor and Corndon Tor. The pathway continues around Nag Hill.
God, what a fantastic day.
And the visibility over the open moorland is excellent.
Got a badger's holt down there. That field of bluebells over there.
Although the pathway is well indicated, when it reaches this area of gorse it meanders a lot and you can easily stray off course.
Right, that's where we're heading for, which is Yar Tor.
At this point we have a choice of routes. Turn right and follow the road before turning left, heading up to Yar Tor, which is the easiest route, or a lower track, which is a little more difficult to find and climbs more steeply, but is far more rewarding. We'll try that one. But first, a ground spider. It's just visible if you look closely.
We've got a path of sorts here. What we're looking for is a main path that goes upwards towards Yar Tor, which I think we'll come across shortly. I think we've now got a semblance of a path up here. Hopefully we'll be okay. This path isn't for the faint-hearted, that's for certain. Quite steep, and you really need to take your time. But I'm hoping we've hit the right one now. It's certainly heading in the right direction. And there's our goal. We're nearly there now. Just got to go up to that peak, and that's part of Yar Tor. Yar Tor must be one of the best places to see the surrounding district. Wow, some cracking views. Absolutely cracking.
On reaching the top, it's time for a breather. Yar Tor is fairly sprawled out, with many pinnacles. At 416 metres in height, on a good day it gives excellent views of the surrounding tors and moorland.
Corndon Tor over there, which is where we're going, on to Corndon down.
There's that thing, Alison.
There's Sharp Tor again from a different angle.
In the distance is the memorial and the road we have to cross, which incidentally has its own history. The track to follow is laid out before us and we'll shortly make our way down it.
Got to get down here first.
Part of the road that separates Yar Tor and Corndon Tor runs down to Babony, where there used to be a flour mill between the 13 and 1800s. From the mills to a mile distance is known as the Miller's Mile. The pack horse ponies couldn't manage a full load of flour and a man until they reached more even ground. The milestone was provided to indicate this point where the riders could mount their ponies. The flour rocks was so named because a pack horse lost its load of flour over the rocks adjacent to the milestone. Which stone is the actual milestone is almost impossible to decide, and whether the milestones or indeed the flour rocks are the original stones is debatable, but the story is interesting. But I would have thought it's obvious when to mount their ponies.
It's food, I think.
Close by to the flour rocks is the money pit, which is a curbed cairn or burial chamber. A farmer from Poundsgate had a dream that it was filled with treasure. He prized off the cover but found very little. Originally, the chamber was sited at the terminal of a triple stone row, which have all but disappeared.
Do you want it back?
Yeah, in a minute. Coming up to the memorial.
Lieutenant Cave Penny was an officer in the Queen's Victorian-owned Corps of Guides, a regiment in the Indian Army. During the First World War, the regiment was sent to Palestine and Egypt. Cave Penny was tragically killed by an enemy sniper on June the 8th, 1918. he was buried in Palestine. At 19, he seemed extremely young to be in command. His family at one time lived in Sherrill or Sherwell, depending how you pronounce it, about a mile away from this memorial.
Bit of wind, got up, but not too bad.
When we look back at Yard Tor, we can see just how sprawled out it is.
Getting quite close to Corndon Tor now.
One aspect of taking pictures of tours is that you can let your imagination take over, and they can look like all sorts of animals. Here is a whale or a shark. It's very close to the main pinnacle where Alison and John are standing. And here's another two, self-distancing of course. On the southern side of Corndon Tor is another myth or legend, Pixie Cave. There must be quite a few of these caves scattered about Dartmoor.
Moors as far as the eye can see, eh?
Corndon Down is named after the cairns that are found here. There are 3 substantial structures and a 4th less obvious one. They date back to the Bronze Age. Some estimates indicate that the largest is between 2,000 and 3,000 tonnes, which seems an awful lot.
Going across Corndon Down now.
It can be difficult to recognise tors from differing angles, but here we have Ripon Tor, Saddle Tor, Bel Tor, Hay Tor and Tunhill Rocks.
Another cairn.
Me, my delivery.
In the broader picture we have Hamel Down, Honeybag Tor, Chinkwell Tor, Bel Tor, Bonehill Rocks, Hay Tor, Bel Tor, Saddle Tor and Ripon Tor. Many are just too distant to recognise till you've had a chance to study the photographs.
I don't think I've seen such good visibility for quite a while.
This is the last fairly well-known rock structure before we leave Corndon Down. Cathanger Rock. It is the most northerly outcrop of Corndon Tor and is actually a small tor in its own right. There is a tree that stood alongside it which has unfortunately suffered storm damage. The name Cathanger is probably linked to the wildcat that history says used to inhabit the rocks here.
Yeah, you did. We're heading downwards now. We'll shortly be coming to a road, but we're not going to go on it. We're going to go beside it for a little while.
Looking in a northwesterly direction, I'm not able to recognise so many tors. Laughter Tor, Bel Tor, Longford Tor, higher and lower white tors, and that's about it. We're looking towards Cater Common. We're now going to turn right and head for West Shallowford.
Or I might try going down to my right just now. See if I can get a path. Looks like we've got
A live badger set. It looks to be in use with plenty of soil debris scattered about. There are numerous exits or entrance holes, but no badgers though, not at this time of day. Although we are quite close to the road, we don't go onto it until we take the turning to West Shallowford. A BT Open Reach worker seems to be sorting out some wiring problems.
Yeah, I will.
The next part of our route is a complete change of scenery and was totally unexpected. I thought we'd miss the spring flowers, particularly the bluebells, but as you will see, that was not the case.
really nice.
A mixture of bluebells, red campion and purslane flowers were on show, and they were at their peak. As we continued down the pathway, the flower show got better and better. The purslane flowers are fantastic. 5 double petals on each flower. They are so delicate.
Discovered in bluebells here. Look at the campion.
It's possibly
Wow.
because the pathway has not been used very frequently.
Quite impressive, isn't it?
Due to the COVID-19 restrictions, it is almost overgrown and the flowers have had a chance to really take hold.
Look at this purslane again. Oh wow. Beautiful. Oh, just a picture. Beautiful.
This lane is approximately a quarter of a mile in length, before it discharges adjacent to cottages at West Shallowford. My video
Beautiful.
does give an indication of the show of flowers, but I don't really think it does it justice. It's one of those occasions when you need to be there to really appreciate it fully.
At the bottom.
We're heading towards East Shallowford, along a typical moorland road, crossing the West Webburn River and back onto the moor.
Eh?
Work carries on.
Our route now takes us to the hamlet of Jordan.
Fantastic.
The bluebells here, once again, are totally unexpected, as I thought this year's blooms had finished on the moor.
Look at this bluebells here.
But these are almost on par with Holwell Lawn.
They're not bad, are they? No worries. We'll shortly be walking along, I think it's the River Webburn, so it won't be long before we get to that point. Normally this area is really boggy, but obviously with all the nice warm weather we're having, that seems to have dried up, shall we say.
Just before the gate is a number of very pretty common spotted orchids. The pathway now more or less follows the West Webburn River over fairly open moorland
What I'm really surprised at is the amount of bluebells that are here now.
until we get to Jordan.
Look at the roots of that tree.
I think that's the Webburn, the River Webburn.
It doesn't matter where you look, every open space seems to be full of bluebells.
Wonderful. I've never known this as a beauty spot for bluebells before.
Because we haven't been here when they're out, I suppose.
No, we haven't. Certainly quite spectacularly beautiful. Just look at them. Totally stunning. Quite blows me away, this. We're just coming up to a place called Jordan now. A little hamlet, miles from anywhere really, but it's very nice.
Before continuing along our route, I wanted to see some of Jordan, and particularly the manor house. Less than 100 metres from the turnoff, down a tarmac road, is an impressive thatched building known as Jordan Manor. It is believed that this was a former longhouse, which over time has had some alterations. Getting back to our walk,
There we have it, Jordan.
the pathway now narrows considerably, initially running right past the door of the Jordan Mill House, before leading to a bridge over the Webburn River. Looking back from the bridge is the garden of the mill house.
I thought these bluebells had finished when we got to Jordan, but they're just going on forever.
We now enter a wooded area, Corndon Woods.
Certainly quite impressive anyway.
The show of bluebells continue, and again it doesn't matter where you look, the blooms are everywhere. The route we're now following is part of the Two Moors Way and follows the West Webburn River until we get to Ponsworthy.
Yet another style. Well, hopefully we can get through the gate.
On the other side of the gate, the woods are once more filled with blooms. The sunlight filtering through the trees makes a very picturesque setting.
Quite a show of bells here. Wow. Blows you away, doesn't it, really?
My fascination for water is always something I can't resist, and here is no exception. I do love the sound, and it's so picturesque and tranquil, an escape from reality. Hard to put into words, really.
Yeah, this is Corndon Woods. Well, actually, Corndon Wood.
In places, the river in Spate has washed away part of the pathway.
Yeah. Just looking at the Webburn. Sounds like a turbine generating electricity there. There's trees down everywhere you look.
In the middle of this area of woodland is an isolated fern and a copper beech tree in full sun. They make cracking pictures.
May blossom, isn't it?
And just a little further on, a hawthorn tree is in full
This
blossom.
is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. This last time we came was so deep in mud we had to run through it. It went up to your calves. Fantastic now. All dried out. Lovely pathway.
In the only part of the field which is still damp are yet more orchids, possibly marsh orchids. Once through the field, and the pathway becomes extremely rugged and somewhat difficult to walk on.
That You never know, it'll give you an idea of what it's like. It's called Forder Bridge. In front of us is Splash Cottage.
We come out of the track at a well-known beauty spot in Ponsworthy, which I'm sure many local walkers will recognise. Just a little way up the road and we turn off to Sweaton.
Right,
Our way forward is up this concrete drive, through a gate and up another very rocky lane.
no,
Stables.
the pathway. What are you after?
Stables in there.
All right. There we go. Another rock-strewn pathway.
Another very rough pathway that has almost been washed away,
Coming up to a gate now.
and again is extremely difficult to walk on. The pathway leads to a route across a couple of fields and gives us a chance to look back at the tors we walked over earlier. After quite a hard walk, a stile at the end sometimes seems to be such an effort. Only one more to go though. After getting over our last stile, we now have a short stretch of road walking before going back out onto the moor, heading for Prim Cottage.
Turning off to go towards Prim Cottage now.
I always have to look closely at these trees to decide whether it's a blackthorn or a hawthorn. The hawthorn has rounder blossom petals. The blackthorn flowers usually come before the leaves. Originally, the cottage was known as Sherberton and named after Robert Sherberton, who lived there, hence the name Sherberton Common, where it stands. It is supposed to be uninhabited.
Last part of the uphill struggle till we get to Bel Tor car park. Wow, what a walk.
I hope you all enjoyed this walk, even though only 3 of us did it. If anyone would like a copy of the video or the GPX route, they should contact the Newton Abbot Ramblers.